Thank you. Thank you, Bishop Ward. As we begin the financial reports, first of all, I'd like to take a moment just to thank you for your abundant generosity and what you've shown already through your giving to the mission endowment. Bishop, I'm happy to let you know that through our offerings last night and this morning, we've raised $15,630 for the mission endowment. Yes. So thank you for that giving that's going to allow that mission work to continue in the future. I am Christine Dodson, your Conference Treasurer and Benefits Officer. The financial reports were presented to you online and in the conference workbook. Today, we'll receive verbal reports from the Council on Finance and Administration, the Board of Pension, Health Insurance, and Equitable Compensation. Also included in the presentation and consideration of our financial reports, but not providing a verbal report, is a report of the Conference Board of Trustees and the Commission on Clergy Medical Leave. These reports had informational updates with no proposed changes in action or policy. All of the reports are included in your conference workbook. The reports have been intentionally written to be clear and concise. Verbal reports will point out changes in policy. Additional information has been provided to the annual conference through the website and also in our pre-conference videos. So, Bishop, if it is acceptable to you, we'll begin with our chairperson of the Council on Finance and Administration, go through all of the financial reports, receive questions for all the reports at once, and then our chairpersons will move adoption of their reports as needed. Yes. So we'll welcome David Peel, our chairperson of the Council on Finance and Administration. Thank you.
So, Bishop Ward, I'm David Peel, and I serve as chairperson of the Council of Finance and Administration. And the report on the council can be found starting on page 28 of your workbook. If you'll go ahead and take that out so you can follow along with us. So, Bishop and annual conference members, we can rejoice that during 2017, with all the financial troubles across our nation and the world, our North Carolina Conference churches gave 91.49% of apportioned dollars. North Carolina was one of 29 annual or missionary conferences in the United Methodism to pay 100% of general and jurisdictional conference apportionments for 2017. We are thankful for the partnership and ministry between all levels of the United Methodist Church, including those at the general church level who serve to empower and equip annual conferences and local churches in ministry. We'll now move to the annual conference report for your consideration. Much of what is included in this report for the years 2017 and prior years have been audited by our external auditors, Crossland & Associates, and the Council's Audit Committee has received a completed draft report for 2017. I am pleased to report to you that the conference has received a clean and unmodified opinion. This gives us assurance that we can feel confident that the reports you receive at year's end and throughout the year from the Treasurer's Office can be considered complete and accurate. Regarding the 2018 report from your annual conference, Council on Finance and Administration, the report is included in the conference workbook beginning on page 28. Section 1 of the report contains the budget proposals for your consideration. Two primary changes to the 2020 budget include the consolidation of several budget lines, specifically within the outreach ministry. On page 28, lines 2, 6, 7, 8, and 9 were combined into line 9. The same funding levels are planned and administration of the funding will process through the mission team in the same manner current grant requests are processed. All ministries who received budget funding previously are expected to apply through the expanded grant administration procedures in the mission team. Somewhat similar to the outreach ministry team change, budget lines 14, 19, 20, 21, and 22 are all consolidated into the faith formation budget line. The new faith formation ministry is planned to cover all areas that have been consolidated through the faith formation ministry. Consolidating the budget is intended to provide more flexibility in funding so that resources can be best matched with ministry areas within the faith formation as needed in future budget years. Other changes throughout the budget include splitting out the budgets for clergy housing allowance to the budgets from which the rest of their compensation is paid, and moving compensation funding for conflict transformation ministries to the appropriate salary and benefits line to properly show the compensation cost. So the budget for 2020 begins on the first page of the council's report on page 28. The total budget proposed to be raised in 2019 and spent in 2020 is a 1.95% decrease from the 2019 budget as shown on page 29 on row 90. That is the second year in a row that this annual conference has approved or will approve a decrease in its annual conference budget. So it's a 1.9% decrease, not increase. Section 2A of the council's report begins on page 30 and provides the actual operating budget for 2017. Section 2B reports the actual operating budget for the current year 2018, and Section 2C reports on page 34 activities of the Contingency Reserve Fund. The Reserve Fund report shows all operating income and expenses from the fund. In addition to what is shown, unrealized gains on investments of just over $2.4 million, leaving a net surplus in the Reserve Fund of just over $1.6 million for the year 2017 alone. This fund is administered by the council, and earnings provide funding for supplemental appropriations to undergird ministry throughout the year. All the financial policies are found in Section 3 of the council's report and begin on page 36 of your workbook. Changes to the financial policies are primarily date changes or updates with no changes to policy. The addition of wording to New Faith Communities, apportionment of formula shown on page 36, is intended to clarify the applicability of the formula within the many ways that the New Faith Communities are being formed in our annual conference. Section 4 provides a policy for the itinerant clergy moving expense reimbursement, as shown on page 38. Primary changes to the moving expense policy are due to changes in taxation of moving expenses reimbursements from the 2018 Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Moving expense reimbursements are now taxable, and the policy changes move the responsibility for the payment and the tax reporting of the reimbursement from the local church to the annual conference. The goal is to reduce the burden of tax reporting for these reimbursements to the local church and allow the conference to handle the reporting and any required benefit calculations on the reimbursement. Where pension will be due on reimbursements, the payment will be moved through the itinerant clergy moving expense business line. These changes are found in Section 3.A on page 39 and again on Section 4 on page 40. Section 7 on page 43 includes a recommendation for a district superintendent's salary for 2019. The Council on Finance and Administration received a comment made during the 2017 annual conference requesting the council to study the formula for a district superintendent's salary and consider a formula basing the superintendent's salary on the average of the top 50 local church pastors' appointments rather than the top 25 has been used in recent years. The Budget Committee considered the request as part of the review of the formula and recommendation for this report. The Council continues to recommend that the formula for district superintendents be the average of the top 25 local church salaries plus unvouchered allowances as stated on page 43 in Section 7. This formula results in a proposed salary that equals $111,036 for 2019. This is a $1,020 or a 0.9% increase over the 2018 salary. Bishop, this concludes the review of the Council's 2018 report, including the financial policies and budget, and when it's appropriate, we will move adoption of the report.
Thank you. As is our practice, we'll hold any discussion or questions because these reports are interrelated. Scott Dodson will now lead us through the next report, Committee on Insurance.
Bishop Ward, I am Scott Dodson, and I serve as the chairperson for the Conference Insurance Committee. The report of the Insurance Committee can be found on pages 48 to 52 of the conference workbook. The report includes the recommendations of the Insurance Committee related to our conference health and life insurance policies. The Insurance Committee worked to balance the costs of providing insurance benefits with providing a sustainable plan that provides meaningful and helpful benefits to plan participants. The recommendation of the Insurance Committee is to continue our self-funded plan for actively serving plan participants with changes proposed to both benefits and premiums for plan participation. Plan changes proposed include a pre-certification program for diagnostic imaging services such as MRIs, cost shopping incentive programs to help participants better manage costs related to services, and a recommendation to move to a revised mandatory mail order program for maintenance drugs. The revised mandatory mail order program was changed from what was recommended last year during the annual conference to allow maintenance drugs to be filled at Walgreens in addition to the mail order program. In order to keep other benefits at current levels and adopt these proposed changes, health insurance premiums will increase by 5% for the church and the plan participants. Life insurance benefits for plan participants are proposed to continue at the current level of benefits and costs. And in addition, the dental and wellness programs are recommended to keep the same levels of benefits and costs. The Insurance Committee further recommends that retiree insurance coverage continue to be provided through the Health Reimbursement Arrangement, or the HRA model, funded as recommended by the Conference Board of Pensions. Thank you for your time and attention today. The Insurance Committee looks forward to our continued work together to provide meaningful and sustainable wellness and insurance benefits. Bishop Ward, we are pleased to answer questions of these recommendations after the other reports, and when it is appropriate, to move to adoption of this report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Dennis Goodwin, the Board of Pensions.
Bishop, members of the annual conference, I get the chair of the board of nothing but good news. Our report is found in your conference workbook beginning on page 54. Report A on page 54 provides a listing of those who've been approved for special grants and those retiring this year, and we recognize the retirees a few moments ago. There is one change in Report A, Section 2D, strike through James R. Bliss. Report B is our funding plan for pre-1982 pension liability. Our conference adopted this plan in 1991 as required by the General Conference to fully fund this by 2021. And the status of that funding is provided in Report B. And we know we're funded. The Board of Pension recommends that the past service year rate for 2019 increase by 2.59%, which will be $754 per service year. We continue to celebrate the fact that this is funded. Now, please remember, this funding is dependent on current market conditions and rate increase assumptions of future boards. Anything drastic in either way could cause changes. Sections 2 through 5 of Report B provide the details of the plan provisions of the Ministerial Pension Plan, the Comprehensive Protection Plan, our current pension plan, the Clergy Retirement Security Program, and the Minister's Transition Fund. Please note on page 70, there is a 0.7% reduction in the billing rate for the defined benefit portion of the Clergy Retirement Security Program to 8.1%. It's dangerous when President Trump goes off script. I am equally dangerous. It's just a personal word. If you've been keeping track, the amounts being placed in our clergy's retirements have been on a trend to be less and less. That trend will probably continue. So I want to implore, especially those clergy age 50 and under, that more of the responsibility of your retirement will fall upon your shoulders. West Path is a good place to put it in your PIP. Increase it 0.5 to 1% a year so that when the day comes and you can stand in front of this stage, you can do so and enjoy your retirement. It's also recommended that the comprehensive protection plan be open to automatically enroll those under 3/4 time appointment. Funding for retiree health insurance, HRAs, is recommended to increase 3% to $3,715 for 100% level. With 40 years of credit at 90% level, that will be $3,344 per person. With this proposal for retiree health plan design in place, the board feels comfortable with the conference claimant's budget line in the CFA report to fund the health reimbursement accounts continuing at $2.7 million. As you've heard me say before, it's not a lot of money if you say it fast. The budget the budget is $2.2 million to be used for the HRA, $500,000 to be set aside for the retiree insurance liability. Any funding not used in the current year benefits will be available for our liability. With good market returns in 2017, an actuarial gain in the valuation, we are less than $1 million unfunded as of January 1 of this year. It gets better. We expect to present a budget to you at next year's annual conference to be reduced drastically as funding for past service liabilities at that time for both to be fully funded. Won't that be a glorious day? Now it's dependent on market conditions. So pray for our country. Report C of our report is on page 64, and that's the resolution for housing allowance exclusion for retirees and those on medical leave that they need for income tax purposes, and we pray that continues. This concludes the report of the Board of Pensions, and upon adoption, I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you. And Johnny Wright, equitable compensation.
Good afternoon. Bishop, annual conference member, my name is Johnny L. Wright. I serve as the chairperson for the Commission on Equitable Compensation. This report is included in your conference workbook beginning on page 72. The Commission recommends that the 2019 minimum salary for full-time elders and local pastors increased by 1.8%, or $804 to $45,490, and 65% of that be included, which would include the student pastor, $29,569. This recommendation is intended to take into account the economic struggles local churches are facing and the knowledge that so many of our churches have gone to part-time over the last several years. We encourage each congregation to look at their own financial circumstances as well as the skills and offering of their pastor, as they discern a fair and just wage for their pastor. There's no slides for you to see today. There are no other changes on eligibility or policy included in this 2018 report. As a connectional church, it is our expectation that churches receiving an equitable comp fund will pay 100% of their apportionment. The commission report that 20 charges received grants for mission and compensation assistance for a total of $158,982 in 2017, and has awarded for calendar year 2018 for 17 charges for a total of $155,317. Bishop, this concludes the report of the Commission on Equitable Compensation. When it is appropriate, I move the adoption of this report.
These 4 reports are before you. There's a lot of good news in these reports. However, there may be questions or concerns that you want to raise. Does anyone have anything they would like to say? Yes, front row. Microphone 5. This way is probably closest.
Conference. I'm Kelly Barr, pastor of Roland United Methodist Church in the big city of Roland, North Carolina, the cultural epicenter of the South. Bishop, I rise with concerns once again this year about the insurance report.
Okay.
We just had Lauren Faith on stage, and on behalf of medically fragile children, many of Lauren's drugs, as well as other children's drugs, must be compounded. They cannot be done readily by a mail-order company or by Walgreens. Lauren and other children like Lauren need a pharmacist that is close by, that is tracking what they are taking, as well as any herbs and over-the-counters, and can provide immediate assistance with this. I rise in objection, first of all, to the requirement for mail order or Walgreens. Also, once again, insurance is increasing this year by 5%. I believe it was 9% last year. Equitable comp is going up by 1.8%. Our insurance is outpacing equitable comp like crazy. A young pastor that's going through the steps to come into full connection with this conference is losing money more and more every year. And then when they get into the executive session, the first question they're asked is, are you in debt as to embarrass yourself for the conference? And heck yes, with student loans and insurance outpacing their pay, they're deeply in debt. We owe it to do something to modify the extreme cost. We didn't raise equitable comp to protect churches, and yet their insurance portion went up 5%.
Kelly?
Yes, ma'am.
We hear your concern, and we all share concern for all of our families. Do you have a motion to make, or are you?
I'm just rising up.
Please.
I'll let somebody else think about this and offer a motion
Okay.
on all of this. I'll go take my meds now, Bishop. I apologize.
No, that's not to ask you to sit down. Just wondered if you have a motion or whether. Okay.
I move we strike that portion of the insurance report that requires mail order drugs and allow our participants to use their personal pharmacy of choice.
Do you want me to speak to that?
Is there a second to the motion? Yes, Scott, would you speak to it?
Okay, so the reason that we would like to do mail order maintenance drugs is this, that we, as a conference, we pay all of we're self-funded, so every bit of pharmaceutical costs that we have when we go to the pharmacy, we pay that collectively. So we are constantly trying to balance the finances of the church with the finances of the individual people. Please know that this year, when we sat down at the table to figure out the insurance increase in the costs, when we sat down at the table to make the expenses balance the premiums coming in because we're self-funded, we should have, the easy way would have been to increase the premiums 12.3%, because that's actually the gap between what we are going to expect to pay out next year and what we're bringing in as a conference in this fund. So we sit down, we take it very seriously, how best to balance the increases to the church and the costs. So we came up with this plan. We said, instead of increasing the premiums by 12.3%, we're going to increase them 5% for the churches and the people. We are going to take 2% of the increase, and we're going to try to save money. And we'll talk about the saving of the money. And then about $500,000 we're going to take out of reserves because we had great market returns last year. So 12% comes 5 from increasing the premiums, 5 from savings, and then 2 from cost savings. So the way that we can save costs as a church, as a body of Christ, is to do this. We don't want to cut benefits. We don't want people to say, you can't get the drugs that you need. That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is say, it is cheaper to do mail order drugs for drugs that you're going to get every single month, okay? Years ago, this body passed a rule that said, if you're on expensive medicine, you have to do a monthly mail order drug. So every 28 days, my wife, who has MS, I have to order the drugs through the mail. And I set a little thing on my phone that reminds me to order them. If when my little reminder goes off, if I don't order them, we don't get the drugs. Now, there's a couple ways to look at that. One could be to say, you know, it is oppressive that this body is trying to save money. Another way we could look at it is say, we're all in this together. Praise the Lord. We're trying to get drugs for the people who need it so that we can be healthy. So we can do away with this mandatory drug order thing. We can. But understand why we're doing it. Because if you have drugs that you're going to be taking every month for the next 10 years, which we have many people in that situation, it is actually cheaper to get them through the mail. You will save money because you won't be charged your monthly premium or the copay every time. And the church, us, the body of Christ, will save money. Now, we know that there are exceptions. If your children or someone in your family has to get medicine somewhere, of course we recognize that. Of course we do. But for many people who are on the same medicine every month, it will be far cheaper for us to do that. And while I fully understand the raises that people got in the church is 1.8%, and the cost is going up 5%, I realize that. But medical costs in the United States go up 7% every year. That's not our doing. That's just the world in which we live. So we as the body, the insurance committee, are doing our very best to balance excellent health care because we love our participants and the economics of the churches and the conference.
I understand the concerns with the cost. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
But as I say to my senator, what's my child's life worth? I understand that there are many people that get the same medicine every day, but there are many of us whose children do not get the same medicine every month.
Yes.
They're on experimental drugs. They're on drugs that need to be changed regularly. And I can't sit down every month and say, I need to make sure I get my blood pressure medicine right now for these children. I can't say I'm on 120 milligrams of Dilantin a day. Oh, the doctor just changed it to 150. I also understand that the National Institute of Health documents over 150 medication errors every single year, many of them from pharmacies.
Oh, I agree. So
I need a pharmacist that knows who I am, knows what I take, that I can go to with questions and say, Is it truly safe for me to take this medicine, or my child take this medicine when he's taking this over the counter? And I can't do that with a mail order pharmacist.
I would agree with that, and this is how we handle that in our family. When we go to the doctor, we have a list of all the medicines that my wife takes. So the prescribing physician is the one who does this, not the local pharmacist.
But the pharmacist does a double check. That's the job of the pharmacist. That's why they go to school and become pharmacists, not pill counters.
Okay.
Kelly?
Yes, ma'am.
I got you.
Kelly, I
sorry,
think,
I am-
well, no, I think,
I'm just telling you how we handle it, because
let us speak to your concern.
Yeah.
Scott, thank you.
Yep.
And Christine as well.
And the bishop had asked that we just mention, because the formulary of what is required, would be required to go through the mail order is a pretty set formulary. So there's a list of things that would go through there. So it's not always typically going to be your compounded prescriptions or things like that. It's going to be some of those regular maintenance items. And we have a long list. You probably don't want us to read it to you, because there is a long list of those that would be. But we would have to go through, because each person with the different medications, and compare it to that list to see if it works or if it would be involved in that or not. Just for your reference, because that was a question, the cost component of this particular thing is a cost difference of $40,149 to the plan. The cost difference to the participants is not counted in that because of the savings in the copay. So we would have to look at the particular medication you're talking about, see if it's on this list of routine maintenance drugs, which again are not typically the compounded type of drugs. But we'd have to look at that list for sure.
Okay, we have a paddle up at the back. Yes, microphone 6, please. Microphone 6. Are you speaking for the motion or against?
I'm want to make a general statement about the budget for next year concerning this.
Okay, if you could hold that while we have a motion on the floor and a second that we need to care for first.
Okay.
Could you remain there? We'll come back to you. Would anyone like to speak to this motion? Yes, microphone 8.
Ken Ripley, Heritage District. I totally agree with the problem because the mail order is not always cheaper or safe. But I'd like to make a substitute compromise motion. Instead of banning it altogether like we did last year, in which I made that, I would like to substitute the word encourages for requires. And that will allow both to be satisfied.
Is there a second? Okay, his amendment has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion of it? Encourage, substitute for required? Yes, microphone, yes.
Bishop, I just have a question for clarification. So are we saying that all medications need to come from Walgreens? See, I'm not hearing that. So can you clarify? We're only talking about the ones that are the kind of regular regimen kind of thing.
Okay, we have a question. Is it all or some?
It is not all medicine. As I understand it, it is maintenance drugs. So if you take medicine for diabetes and you've taken it every month and you're going to continue to take it, those are the things. It's not if you go to the doctor and they give you a prescription and you go and fill it. You can do that anywhere. Just maintenance.
Yes, microphone 8, please. Okay, just a second. He's saying encourage rather than
A couple of questions and then a comment. If I'm understanding this correctly, then a lot of compounded drugs would not be included under this policy. That if you had to have a compounded drug and it's not on the list, that you could go to your regular compounding pharmacy already and continue to get that medication. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay, and then I think you've just clarified that some medications you might want to get from your local pharmacy that does not happen to be a Walgreens unless it's something that's a maintenance drug that you normally get. Is that sort of,
My understanding is
Okay.
that we had an issue we didn't want everything to be mail order, so that if you didn't want to do it through the mail, you could go to Walgreens.
okay,
It was just another way to be accommodating.
then I have very little problem with the original version before these two proposals came up, because the one thing we're not taking into account is, and I don't have a dog in this fight because I'm laity, so I don't have to pay for the insurance. Well, actually, through our church, we pay for it. We're not taking into account, I think, fully the difference in a cost for insurance if we switch to a different policy. And I think that's what y'all were talking about. If you're going from a 5% raise to a 12% raise, that's a significant raise for pastors across the board. It's a significant raise for churches across the board. If we're able to still get compounded drugs from a compounding pharmacy, if that's necessary, and if I can still get a regular one-time medication from a local pharmacy that may not be Walgreens, then I don't have as much of a problem with that, and I would not necessarily be in favor of either of the motions that have been proposed.
Then we receive your statement in opposition to Brother Ripley's motion that we replace require with encourage. We're on that substitute motion.
Right, that would
Does
be-
anyone wish to speak in favor of that motion to substitute encourage for require? Yes, microphone 4.
I don't know what, my name's David Gyra. I'm at Orange United Methodist Church. And I'm not sure which I'm speaking towards or against, or I just want to share something. I have stage 4 lung cancer, and first of all, I want to say thank you to this conference, because I have been provided with the medication every month for the last 10 months, and it has been very effective, and I'm healing and doing well. So I want to say thank you for that.
Praise the Lord.
So thank you for that. And I also want to say the prescription is filled through Walgreens Prime, which I assume is one of the mail order resources. And they've treated me very well. They always ask if I want to ask questions of the pharmacist, and it's worked really well for me. And so I just want to put that out there for the body to consider. And again, thank you.
Yes, microphone 7.
I'm Sue Yeagle, Carter District, St. Paul Church. I want to speak in favor of the amendment to strike mandatory and put I forgot the exact
Encourage.
language. Yes.
Okay.
After speaking with my doctor and a number of my friends over a course of time, I feel like this is putting an undue burden on our pastors. The increase that might be necessary to compensate for that does not take care of all the situations that come up, nor does the location of a Walgreens in a lot of parts of our state is that an equitable solution? Is it accessible, or any of those other things to require it to be done at one place? Maybe if you had to pay the difference in another drugstore in that place, that would be something that we could consider. But I'm speaking in favor of the amendment to the original motion.
Are you ready to vote on the amendment? If you would favor the amendment to replace the word require with the word encourage, would you lift a hand? If you oppose it, would you lift a hand? I think it passed. Pardon? It passed. Yes, we believe it passed. We passed, right? Done? Okay, okay. You know, when you look at this whole sweep, it's good to have more than two eyes.
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay. So we're back to the original motion. Wait a minute. We amended it. So it's done? Do we have more? Do we have the written motion? Could we have the written motion, Gayla? Oh, great. That will help. Thank you very much. Strike the requirement to serve mail order. Okay, the original motion
Is now encourage.
was moved to strike the requirement to receive medication
Via mail order from the insurance report, but now that's been require has been changed to encourage.
Okay. We amended it to encourage, not require. So if you would support that, would you raise your hands? If you oppose it, would you raise your hands? It passes. My apologies for my confusion. Okay. Microphone 6.
Terry Wayne Locklear, Gateway District, West Robertson. As we all know, healthcare and pharmacy prices are continuously going up. And as we have known earlier that the general budget of the whole conference is going down, why aren't we allocating some more towards the medical and pharmacy? You know, the general conference, you say budget's going down.
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty hearing. It sounds garbled somehow through the mic. Can you perhaps get a little closer? And this is a question, so
Yeah.
I invite these people who can answer questions about this. Could you start again?
Okay, as the yearly general budget has been going down, it's stated for the past 2 or 3 years, why aren't we allocating more towards medical and prescription plan than what we are now? Because we stated earlier that it's going down at least 1.9%. When you're budgeting these and you see things coming down, as we know, medical costs and pharmacy costs continue to rise. Why aren't we allocating more towards pharmacy and medical care?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So those are 4 different sets of different benefits. So
I
we have the
understand
budget, that is our annual conference budget, and then health insurance. Now, health insurance in our annual conference, we direct bill. So that means we bill to each church and for each pastor for their portion for health insurance. So as health insurance goes up, those premiums go up, then that billing to the church goes up. Now, the budget is different because that is apportioned for the ministry through the apportionment formula. In some annual conferences, I'll go ahead and tell you, they apportion health care as well. So if in our annual conference we chose to apportion health care, that would be part of the budget, and then every time there's an increase, it would go straight into the budget, straight into apportionments, and every church would participate in funding health care versus the way we do it with direct bill. So if we, as an annual conference, choose to keep the same level of health care benefits in our plan for our pastors and those laypersons who are on our plan, if we want the same level of benefits, because we're self-funded, that brings us automatically the cost to pay those. So that increases the health care cost. Because we direct bill it, it goes to the churches and to the pastors that participate in the plan. If the annual conference chose to apportion that, we would add that into the budget, and we would apportion that out to all the churches just like we do the rest of those. So they're different functions for that funding, and they're funded in different ways through direct bill and through our apportionment system.
So isn't any way we can increase what's being paid out? Is that the local church's responsibility to increase the health care and pharmacy costs towards their ministers? Who allocates the percentage of what goes into health care and pharmacy prices?
As I understand that question was who allocates or who sets what goes into those health care
what
costs?
percentages go
You
into
all,
it?
that's what you're doing right now,
Okay.
is establishing the benefits because you all set those benefits, and as a result, the set of benefits generates certain rates because it costs X number of dollars to provide those benefits. So the annual conference, that's what you're doing right now, is setting those. So if the annual conference said, by the way, we're willing to pay 15% more, how many benefits can you fit into 15% higher premiums? Then we could figure that out. Just like if you said, we must cut rates 15%, we would have to cut benefits accordingly to make that happen. So the annual conference sets that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, microphone 4.
Brian Wingo, Rayford Church, Rayford and Beautiful, Hope County. I think my medication must have kicked in while Brother Dotson was giving his report. I have a question about the mail order and Walgreens. We're a little confused back here on our row. When does that take place? Do we have to go to the mail order service or use Walgreens especially and not CVS or Walmart? Or?
So my understanding is we've taken that out and we've said that it's just recommended to do it. So there is no more requirement to do that.
Okay.
This body has already voted on that.
Okay.
Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we can get our drugs anywhere.
What did you say?
I didn't hear that.
Couldn't hear you, Brian.
So we can get our drugs anywhere.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Safely, right? Safely.
Okay, microphone 12. And this is important, but we do need to bring this to conclusion. So if you have something,
Patrick Sinclair, Heritage District.
microphone 12, yes? A little louder, please.
Is now encourage versus require going to change our premiums?
I couldn't hear. What did you say?
So to keep this all mathematically sound, we should, since we took those savings out, we should increase our rates by 5.5% to the churches and the participants.
And that's what we've already done, but that was with the requirement to do mail order. Now we don't have to do it.
Well,
So
I'm
where's that
sorry.
difference gonna-
I'm sorry, I'm struggling to understand you. The way we were going to save $40,000, which is about a 0.5% increase to the churches and participants. So we propose 5%. If we take that $40,000 savings out, we should increase the rates by instead of 5%, 5.5%.
I heard a number of 12.5 earlier. What was that number?
That was the number that, when we sat down at the table, that's how much the rates would have had to increase if we didn't do anything else.
Okay, yes, sir, thank you.
Are we ready now to, my sense of the House, are we ready to vote on these reports? If you, yes, back here. Okay, someone call the question. If you would desire to vote on this now, the question's called, would you lift a hand?
Can I have a motion to make on this report?
Okay. All in favor of calling the question, would you lift your hand? All opposed? The question's called, brother. Sorry. By parliamentary procedure, the question was called. Now, let's move back to the main motion as amended. Are we ready to improve the insurance report? If you would you lift a hand? The insurance report. If you would approve it, would you lift your hands high? Good exercise. Okay, down if not, it is approved. There was not comment on the other three, so we can approve those three together. If you approve the CF&A, pensions, and equitable comp reports, would you lift your hands? Any opposition? They are approved. And we affirm receipt of the trustees and clergy medical leave reports included in your pre-conference materials. They are updates and no changes in policies. So we are thankful to all of you who serve on these committees. Would you stand if you serve on any of these 4 hardworking committees? We appreciate your good work.